What's going on out there? This is Sora Fan Chick back with another video, aka Venus Love. And I do have another video that I want to discuss about what's going on in the world today. You guys know that I don't make videos. Those of you who've watched some of my other videos, you know I don't make videos unless I feel really passionate about something. And due to the events that are happening in the world today, it has led me to have a variety of mixed emotions. Um, if you didn't know by now, obviously, I'm an African American woman. I may seem like I'm young because, I have a lot of youthful content. I do, enjoy youthful content. It makes me feel better. It makes me feel better about life. I don't always like to watch the dread and dreary. Sometimes I like to watch lighthearted things or play video games or whatever. But I am an African American woman. Now, looking at the events of the world today, it is a very scary time. It's a very scary time for a numerous amount of reasons. This would be a completely unscripted, un unthought out video. So if I seem like I'm rambling or I'm going in circles, I apologize for that. But I just feel like there's a lot of things I need to get off my chest regarding the things that are happening in the world today. One of the things that I want to start off in this video by saying is George Floyd. We all know what happened to him. If you don't know what happened to him, um, he was basically murdered by a cop who refused to get off of his neck when he told the cop he could not breathe. And although the coroners don't say that George Floyd died from asphyxiation, um, there were other things involved with him not being able to breathe, and the cops were negligent in not making sure that he was okay. So that's the story behind it. And even when he did not respond, he stopped breathing, he didn't respond. None of the cops told that white cop to get off his neck. The white cop continued to stay on his neck until paramedics got there. And this has led to widespread protests, rioting, looting, all kinds of conversations regarding racial injustice in America. Quite frankly, this is a mirrored incident to all the other incidents that we've had in the past, starting in the 21st century with Trayvon Martin and trickling down to where we are today. And again, my view on the entire situation is it's messed up, obviously. Obviously, it's the worst thing to be afraid of your own law enforcement, to not feel safe by the people that are supposed to protect you the most. I understand that 100% because me and my sister had a very similar encounter last year. I might go into detail in another video regarding my sister and I's personal story, but I want to talk about George Floyd, the protests, and what's happening in Minneapolis right now. So the protests started off peaceful. There were peaceful protests, and I was heavily surprised at how many white people turned out to protest with black people. It was a refreshing change for sure, because in the past, every time Black Lives Matter would protest, every time they would speak about police brutality, every time they would say anything, we'd be hit with all lives matter and blue lives matter, police. And you guys are just over exaggerating. Nobody took us seriously. And when Colin Kaepernick kneeled at the football games, I hope I said his name right. I don't follow sports, but Colin Kaepernick kneeled at the football game, and he was considered a traitor. He was considered unpatriotic. And overall, in the end, NFL ended up terminating him. He basically was blacklisted from playing for the NFL for just for protesting for the rights of black people. And this is not, he's not the only one that's been, you know, silenced or been, he's not the only one that companies or white people have attempted to silence in the past. I mean, Martin Luther King Jr. was shot for peacefully protesting. So it's no, it's not a surprise when it didn't surprise me when these protests escalated. And that's really what I really want to talk about, is the escalation of the protests and how protests go from being peaceful to riots. The thing about it is, a lot of people, I've seen a lot of people make videos and a lot of people make tweets about how these protests should not be violent. They should remain peaceful. And I understand that side too, but I what I don't like about some of the narratives being spun about these protests is, number one, they're being escalated by black people, because from what I'm seeing, that's not that's not 100% true. Some of these violent protesters are coming from other groups, other states, and they're of other various races, and some of them are basically framing us unintentionally, or some of them intentionally. And the problem I have with the idea that, oh, we should always peacefully protest, is that that is not aligned or in line with American history. Now, I do think that looting and rioting is overall uh, destructive to black communities. Why do I think it's destructive? Because we're ruining our own communities. At the end of the day, I get it, life is more important than buildings, but we're only thinking in the moment. If you destroy your own grocery store, where are you going to get food for your children? If you destroy your own pharmacy, where are you going to get medicine for the sickly, for your elderly? And so I think that the problem I have with the rioting and the looting is that it's not calculated. It's not done in a smart way. And I'm not encouraging black people to go looting and rioting, other neighborhoods or even our neighborhood in any form or fashion. What I'm saying is that if you're gonna do something like this, at least be smart about it. There's so many black people destroying black businesses, and I get it, oh, they can build them businesses, but here's a question that I'm gonna ask a lot of black people. Who is going to help us build back our own communities? Because I mean, if you go over there in the white community and destroy their stuff, yeah, they could probably build that stuff back quickly. Their tax money goes straight to their stores, their roads. So yeah, if you destroy their stuff, then yes, I can definitely say for a fact that theirs will be rebuilt. But who is going to help us rebuild our communities if we are destroying it? That's my thing about the looting and the rioting in our own communities. It's not making any type of statement if you're destroying your own stuff. If you're eating yourself, how is that making a statement to anybody? And that's where I have an issue with our tactics regarding protesting. Now, another thing I'm having an issue with, and this is regarding black women. I've been watching a lot of videos, particularly from people like Chrissy and Paris Milan. I've been watching a lot of different videos, from men and women, Angel. And there's a lot of different thoughts I have in my head. First of all, black women, we as a group have always been the face of protests. Since the Trayvon Martin all the way down to now, we've led the Black Lives Matter movement. In fact, the Black Lives Matter movement was started by a lesbian woman. And when I think about that, a lot of the protests that have come out of Black Lives Matter have focused mostly on black men. Now I get that most of the time black men tend to have the highest number of run-ins with the police. They tend to be the most they're treated the worst when it regards to police encounters. I do get that. But my issue is that just a couple of months ago, black men were calling us dogs, ugly, undesirable. I don't date black women. And George Floyd himself, I'm not to say he doesn't like black women, but he's got a whole white fiance over there that's not even marching for him. Now, I want us to stop and think for a minute because like I said, I've been watching a lot of videos from people like Chrissy, a lot of videos from people like Paris Milan, and a lot of the things that they're saying makes a lot of sense too. I get it. Again, I've had my share of run-ins with police, so I have a different sort of connection with George Floyd's situation. In my mind, I also am angry and disgusted at what's going on. But at the same time, I consider myself a sensible, logical person. Okay. And in recent months, I've seen a lot of different black women that have been, you know, done unjustly by law enforcement, such as Breonna Taylor. And it's funny that, amidst everything that's been going on, her story almost went unnoticed. And for the most part, compared to George Floyd, it has. And I've seen a lot of black men be dismissive of what happened to her, even though she did nothing wrong. She did nothing wrong, and she was a victim of negligence, just like George Floyd. And because her and her boyfriend were black, they were assumed criminals. Now, this is not to say her boyfriend wasn't involved in anything, but they went to the wrong house, even though they already locked up the guy they were supposed to lock up, but they went to the wrong house and started shooting. No knocks, no nothing. They didn't even give a warning, and they were wearing regular clothes, so to speak. Now, I get that, again, black men tend to be the highest number of victims, but I find it very ironic that when we are victims of abuse, when we are victims of colorism, when we are victims of police brutality, rape, when black women are victims of anything, because yes, while black men tend to be the highest target among police and gang related crimes, black women are the highest number of targeted domestic violence victims, the highest number of rape assault victims. We are the highest number of homeless, and yet black men never stand up for us. If George Floyd was a woman, and this is just my perspective, if he was a woman underneath that police officer's foot, black men would be accusing us of inciting the situation. They would be calling us ghetto, uh, they deserved it, or they would just remain silent, as they always do when it comes to black women's issues. And so I find it so funny that black women are yelling and screaming on behalf of George Floyd, a man who's not even engaged to a black woman, but from what I hear, had a black girlfriend on the side. And again, I know people are going to say, oh, it's not the time for that. But when is it the time to talk about this? When is it going to be the time? Because we've been dealing with this situation for years. And here we go, protesting, defending black men. And when this is all over, they're going to spit on us again. And so this is why I had to make this video, because I think so many black women are so enraged. They have black sons, they have black fathers, and they want to get out there and fight on behalf of the black cause. And you know what? more power to you. But at the end of the day, I think we need to change the way we protest. Like I said, I personally, because I've experienced what George has experienced, I do believe in the protest. But I also know that black men would not give me the same respect nor fight or speak up for me if the shoe was on the other foot. And so I think black women need to be more neutral in the way that they protest. Yes, I think retweeting Black Lives Matter is fine. I think, speaking up about injustice and police brutality is fine. But going out there, picketing, yelling, helping with looting, and talking about black kings and all this, that needs to calm down for real. Because at the end of the day, black men have always put themselves first. And I think if we haven't learned from the last few months, if we've forgotten somehow how we've been treated behind something that happened to one man, then we're deluding ourselves. We're not being smart. And that's the second thing I wanted to talk about. The third thing I wanted to talk about was how other races are treating this situation. And I think I discussed it a little bit at this video. I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, but I find it ironic that a lot of white people are taking this opportunity to to you know look at black people and pin the violent protests on our racial aspect, on our racial characteristic, as if America wasn't founded by the revolution. Boston Tea Party, throwing the tea into the river, okay? As if a couple of months ago, white people wasn't up there at the White House, at a courthouse with guns and bulletproof vests protesting because they had to do a stay-at-home order. They couldn't get the hair cut and the nails did and get a scoop of ice cream. So this is not inherently a black this is not inherently black behavior. This is human behavior. Just last year, Hong Kong was doing the same thing, and most of you white people were all for it. You were co-signing it. And when their president went over there, or their prime minister, or whoever was over there trying to, control the social unrest, you guys were all, oh, don't try to suppress free speech. China's trying to suppress free speech. But here we got Trump over here doing the same thing. We got Trump over here doing the same thing. And yet you people still support him. You are hypocrites by default of supporting this man. And normally I don't get that involved because I don't take sides when it comes to right, left wing. Both sides suck to me. But Trump is literally the biggest hypocrite sitting in that White House telling you, oh, we can't have this social unrest. We're going to do military action. But when China and Iran did that, suddenly they were bad and America is watching you. The world is watching you. Stop harming protesters. That's what he said. That's what he said. And yet, these same people that supported that argument, who supported Trump in that instance, is now stating that we don't have a right to protest. We don't have a right to riot. And again, I am not for rioting because I think it does a disservice to our communities. But I understand rioting. And I get that this is not something that is exclusive to the black community. This is something that groups have done all over the world. Is it the smartest thing to do? Absolutely not. And if you're doing it, you're not going to benefit from it. But Stop making this a black issue. This is not a black issue. This is not a racial behavior. This is a human behavior. All humans act this way when they feel they are unheard. And just like Martin Luther King Jr.'s son quoted, riots are the voice of the unheard. Was Martin Luther King Jr. necessarily condoning rioting? No. It was right after that he said, I would hope that we wouldn't have to riot because it's a disservice. And I am completely in that mindset. But at the same time, you have to understand that riots happen when the peaceful aspect of things have not been working. When Colin Kaepernick was sitting up there kneeling, that was a peaceful protest. And yet, you white folks, some of you, not all of you, a lot of you, were all lives matter in this, and he's turning football political and all this other crap. And so now that it's turned to violence, suddenly, oh, do it peacefully if you're going to do it. You weren't listening when people were doing it peacefully. You weren't even listening. You were trying to silence the people that were doing things peacefully. Just like Martin Luther King Jr. was silenced for trying to be peaceful. And these same people sit up here quoting Martin Luther King Jr. when they did the same thing to Colin Kaepernick. It's really mind-blowing me. And with everything that's happened, I might get censored for this, but with everything that's happened, we still have Miss Corona, making its way through these protests. And that's another thing I want to talk about. While you people are out there protesting, please be safe. Because we've got one woman just died. She was a pregnant woman. She was young, not old, and she died from COVID-19. So you got people out here protesting, spreading COVID, no masks. Some of them got masks. A lot of them don't have masks. And with all those bodies, what do you expect? I think there's just better ways and smarter ways for us to protest. I think that we haven't been doing it the right way, but I also think that with the riots, at least we're getting attention. At least we're getting attention. Yes, will it be to our detriment? Of course it will. If black people are smart, they do it in a more calculating way, in a strategic sort of way, like Killer Mike said. That's the only way to get anything is when you organize and strategize. But looking at the history of all the riots we've had, dating back to Trayvon Martin and all the other males that were victims of police brutality, I see this being a riot that starts and ends with no results. And that's what we really need to start discussing. What is our goal here? Because of all the riots and the things that's been happening, the social unrest, I have yet to see one unified goal, one unified target. And that's what we need. Otherwise, we cannot change anything. There's a lot, I know a lot of people just want the police officers to be, you know, charged the way they're supposed to be. And that's one thing. But this is so much bigger than George Floyd's situation. If we're talking about making lawful changes, we're not going to just do that by tearing things up. We have to have a reason for it. We have to have a target. And don't give me that bull crap about this is collateral damage. Let me tell you something. I have heard so many people talking about this is war and us destroying buildings is collateral damage. No, collateral damage is unintentional harm to a civilization. You guys are intentionally harming your own civilization. Okay? And this is not a war yet. We don't want it to become a war. Because while you guys are upset and angry, let's be honest. We are a minority group. I'm not saying that we won't put up a fight, but I am saying compared to the majority, we do not stand a chance. So if you think you just gonna go in there and do what you want to do, you're only getting by because the higher authorities are letting you get by. And some of their people are on your side. But the minute you turn on them, you're back to being a minority. And that's the problem I'm having with a lot of our people. We are not thinking straight. We are thinking with our emotions. We are thinking with our pride, but not thinking with the side that produces logic in the brain, that allows us to process, meditate thoughtfully. Yeah. So those are just some of the things I wanted to address about these protests. I didn't want to make a long video. Not sure if this is longer than I wanted it to be, but I just think that there's so many issues going on in the world today that I had to address it because as you guys know, I do address diversity, I do address representation, and I feel like when it comes to diversity and representation, we are always, our voices are always being suppressed. Even in movies, right after, the last few years with the police brutality happening, there were a lot of movies and a lot of shows coming out about black people, you know, fighting the good fight like Dear White People and The Hate You Give. These were all forms of media that was produced to give the black perspective. And even those were suppressed, people criticized, and The Hate You Give, rightfully so, because I mean that movie was clear whitewashing. I'm not whitewashing, lightwashing. They light skinned the girl when she was clearly dark skinned in the book, if y'all read the book. But anyway, my point is that we've tried the nice way. Now we've got people are doing it the hard way. So again, don't take this as an opportunity to try to slander us. Because again, this is not a black thing. This is a human thing. Any human being would do what these black people and these rioters are doing. Is it smart? No. But it is human. And that's all I got to say on the matter. Thank you guys for listening to my video. I want to hear you guys' comments on the entire matter. I want to hear what are your thoughts and what do you think are some solutions? Can we please come together with a common goal? I want to know, what do you think is a solution for reform? Because that's what I'm on right now. I know what the problem is. Everybody knows what the problem is. It's been the same problem for the last 10 years. Okay, last 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, we can go on, last 100 years. But what are we going to do to fix it? What do we expect? Are we looking for reform? And what kind of reform do we want? Okay, that's what I need to hear from the comments. I want to hear from the comments. I mean, you can comment anything you want. Even if you disagree with this video, I'm perfectly okay with that. I'm not against opinions. There's a lot of people who have very negative opinions about the things I say. They don't agree with it, and that's fine. But I said what I said, and I'm gonna say what I say. You may not like what I have to say, but it has to be said, and that's just it. But I really would like to hear, what is the solution? What is our end goal? What do we hope to accomplish? Because I know we want social justice, but do we have any ideas on that how we can go about getting that? What kind of reform ideas do we need? I mean, I'd rather, better police training, you know, on how to handle certain criminals that are unarmed. I'd rather, diversifying the police academy, if that will help. I would rather maybe having, more common sense laws about how police should handle social unrest, for example, because as we can see, these policemen are out here attacking peaceful protesters, which that's insane. I mean, I do know there's a lot of rioters, but if if the peaceful protesters are being attacked, then what's the difference? Are we not allowed the right to protest? So I think that that's something, these are things that we need to adjust, reform the way that police handle protests. They shouldn't be allowed to use weapons during a protest that's peaceful. Now, if it gets rowdy, somebody start trying to fight them. I still don't think a weapon is necessary. I think every policeman deserves the right to defend himself too. He's a life, he's a human. But I think that we need to do better about how police handle unarmed civilians, and there should be other ways for them to do that without always being brute force. Brute force is not always the way. So that's just my opinion on it. Thank you guys for tuning in. I hope you guys are safe. I hope your families are safe. Try to stay safe in your neighborhoods from this COVID. Check up on your family members as much as you can. And hey, peace out. Love to you all.